It's a linguistic labyrinth, a rabbit hole of words within words, a testament to the power of repetition and the endless possibilities of language. Hacha. Here we are back again with chapter 9 of our read aloud of Maximum Entertainment 2.0. And here we are for my little digital slice of the grand land of Olean. Let's get started. Correct the invisible glasses to get going. Let's see here, the 6 pillars. Strangely, I feel like we're already about halfway through the book, which there's 25 chapters, but there's some short ones. This one's a little bit longer than the other ones we've been reading lately, so we got to get through it. Chapter 9, Language Skills. Hackneyed is a word, being worn out by overuse so as to become dull and meaningless. The definition. Do you want your words to be dull and meaningless? Of course not. Then stop saying what other magicians say. You are a writer, even if you ignore the advice in the chapter on scripting, and even if you never commit your words to paper or computer screen. As long as you speak to your audience with pre-planned words, you are a writer. Writing is mind-to-mind communication. You, the entertainer, send your thoughts out through your mouth, whereas the novelist types them for readers to read. In both cases, entertainer and writer, one mind seeks to connect with another. The professional writer knows that every word counts. Excess words allow minds to wander. The professional writer crafts his words, and then an editor refines and polishes. Entertainers rarely have a director, let alone the luxury of an editor. Writing is easy. Good writing is hard. I know that to be true from tortured experience. For 10 years, I wrote an investment newsletter, Weber's Fund Advisor, and I received laudatory letters saying my publication was one of the better written financial services. If that was true, it was more a reflection of the sad state of financial newsletters than on any literary skills I possessed. I always felt that whatever meager writing talent I exhibited stemmed from my being a good reader. And I kept rewriting my 8-page newsletter, which contained mostly charts and graphs, until what I read no longer embarrassed me. As entertainers, we must write clearly. Before anything else can happen, our audience must know what we mean. That's why you must relentlessly drive yourself to fashion your words with precision. Precision. Words and phrases we can do without. Every word you utter can affect your audience, so you must strive to eliminate words that add nothing, or worse, confuse or in any way detract from your targeted reactions. Hackneyed words tarnish your aura. Please read this section carefully. If you do magic and you talk, you almost certainly say some of these hackneyed phrases. And I can attest to that. I sure do. Here are some of the most common overused or misused words and phrases. How is everybody doing tonight? Or, is everybody having a great time? What answer could you possibly expect from these trite questions? And many in your audience are thinking, really? That's how she starts her show? At best, those questions do zero to establish your cred as a performer. At worst, they make you look cheesy and boring. What's the name of your card? That phrase, used by every magician at some time in his or her life, has little meaning for laymen. I have seen, just during the time I've been writing this book, and many times in the ensuing years, spectators look confused when asked this question. and especially if English is not their first language. Cards do not have names! Exclamation point! Only magicians and no one else on earth would ever ask about the name of a card. The exception of this is when you do a trick, the fill trick, for example, where the cards actually do have names written on their backs. Instead, ask, which card did you select? What card are you thinking of? Do you remember the card you saw? What is it? You can, however, ask a spectator to name a card. In this case, name is a verb and it works. Say, stop, as I riffle through the cards. When did you ever hear a non-magician use the word riffle? The correct answer is never. You might flip through the cards, or you could just ask your participant to say stop as I go through the cards, or just say stop. Try. Magicians and mentalists perennially begin effects by announcing, let's try something. Let's try an experiment. Let's try. The word try and its siblings, attempt, endeavor, take a shot, take a stab, are weak, flaccid words. Think back to the The Empire Strikes Back, when Yoda forcefully directs Luke Skywalker to do or do not. There is no try. That's a terrible impression, but it's Yoda. Yes, in some cases you do want to hedge your bet, and try allows that. And it may be brought into play to boost tension by implying that this may work for you tonight or it might not. You are saying to your audience, in effect, I sure hope you're here on one of those good nights when this works. As a side note for that, as an example, I would definitely start by coming out as the magician and being in control and doing maybe 3/4 of your act, and then as you climb up to the climax, they've already seen you succeed time after time after time. And if you've made zero mistakes and you know that you've got the crowd on your side, and you know that you're going to do something like a balloon swallow, which might not be the best for this example because you want. If you're going to do something that almost seems dangerous, then maybe you could do that as you lead up to the climax, because then you're saying everything else that I've done up to this point has been meaningless, menial. It's been small. Now we're getting dangerous. We're getting into the real stuff. So let's go ahead and give it a try. That can imply that you're doing something even more impressive. But yeah. Darren Brown says try frequently on his TV specials. It plays well for him because he works so strongly that he actually needs to throw some uncertainty into the mix. Imagine being so good. We've said this before on the channel. Imagine being so good that failure is the impossible. Like that's that he actually needs to throw some uncertainty into the mix, if for no other reason than to vary the tension level. When he says he wants to try something, you get the feeling that this may well be the moment when you will see him fail. The same holds true for many mentalists who give the impression that each experiment they do, and I'm not a fan of experiment either, is something where the outcome is in doubt. For some other performers, including almost every magician, the audience has little or no doubt that they will succeed. So the try becomes superfluous at best, and because your audience may feel an undercurrent of unnecessary verbal deception, it may start to sound as insincere as it in fact is. So don't overuse it, and only use it for moments where the outcome, as it says here, is in doubt, because that can really drive up the tension and really get the hook set in. So use it sparingly. A silk or polyester cloth is not a silk. It might be a cloth, a piece of cloth, a silk cloth, a bandana, or a kerchief, but the term silk is not used by normal folk. Here's a bit you may enjoy. A bit connotes lower end showbiz. At least say, here's something you may enjoy. Show normal people the cube we call a die. Ask what you're holding and they will say a dice. Our die may be correct English, but it is not commonly known. You might say with a friendly smile, 2 dice, 1 die, to avoid confusion. For my first trick, why would you say something so obvious? Ditto for my next trick. Because then it starts to sound like you're just doing a conveyor belt of tricks. And you're not doing a conveyor belt of tricks. I mean, you are, but you don't want it to be. You want it to be textured. You want there to be flavor throughout your performance. And you want it to feel like a riverboat ride. You want it to feel like you're traveling through this beautiful terrain and you're seeing the color and the flowers and you're seeing the scenic backdrops and as you build up towards the end of it, you want there to be that sunset in the backdrop. You just want it to feel like there's progression and not like it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you for coming out tonight. uh, for my next effect is worse still. What to a layperson is an effect? It's a meaningless filler word that takes you nowhere. Ricky Jay repeatedly used the word effect in his show. Ricky Jay and his 52 assistants. However, in that context, it fits because he was giving, in essence, a history lesson about magic, and so it affected the desired effect. Magic tricks. Which is stronger? I do magic tricks, or I do magic? I recently had somebody ask me if I had my magic in my pockets, and I was like, no, I do magic. Like that was my response. I'm like, I don't have things that do magic. I do the magic with things. Like I can make it happen with anything. What do you have in your pockets? Do some magic. Make it about you as the magician, and try to do that performance from that perspective. So anyone can do tricks. Take it up a notch. Eliminate the word trick or tricks whenever possible. Or looking at it another way, if a layperson learns about your special talent, they'll likely exclaim, "Oh, you do magic." Few will say, "Oh, you do tricks." Just like that. Yeah, that's definitely a phrase. Just like that. You can fall into the habit of that. Just like that. Like I just did. As in, and I threw the coins into the invisible hole. Just like that. Tedious, meaningless, and, when repeated more than once, boring. Boring! Exclamation point. That's not in here. I added that for dramatic effect. If I can see what you just did, it's redundant to tell me you did it just like that. Or, the rings escape from the ribbon, just like that. Or, place your hand on the cards, just like that, which can sound patronizing. And when the spectator does as asked, the "just like that" is often followed enthusiastically with "great!" exclamation point. Or worse, "that's fantastic!" exclamation point. British performers substitute "brilliant!" exclamation point. Unless you're going for a laugh when you bray "fantastic!" exclamation point, or "wonderful!" exclamation point, or "brilliant!" exclamation point, to a spectator upon completion of a simple request, you have just told that person that you assumed her incapable of following your instructions, and the more enthusiastic you are, the more explicit your message becomes. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Yes, please stand here next to me. Great job. Now, unless you have like a comedic act where you kind of mess around with that, you can change the context if it's specific to your character, but it goes in line with the same thing of "now I shuffle the cards." Okay, why'd you shuffle the cards? Like, one, you're saying what you're doing, don't narrate. Two, you're telling them that you did something. So what are you not telling them? Also, don't shuffle the cards when you don't need to, because that's also telling, or just seems fidgety. Not in the book, just some observations in the wild. If you must indicate that the person has done what you want, think of other ways to signal your satisfaction without demeaning them. Perhaps a simple "thanks" or just a quick "perfect," said as an aside. Just so. Just so. I'll place these cards over here, just so. Again, it adds nothing. It's just so much. It's just. It's. Did he do that on purpose? It's just so much filler. Would you like to change your mind? That's a cliche. And come hell or high water, cliches should be avoided like the plague. I'm sick and tired of them. Think outside the box! Exclamation point. I actually just use this for some of the stuff that I do. Would you like to change your mind? Would you like to choose another card? Or something like that. Can also seem slightly insulting to participants, suggesting that their original choices were poor ones, or that they're incapable of making good choices the first time. Be more specific about the options for changing their decision. Should I continue dropping cards, or am I going to offer you one last choice to choose a different envelope? Do you want the one you have, or one of these in my hand? These phrases have more power than the overused "do you want to change your mind?" or any of its variations. So, just thinking about that for my prediction trick, would you like to change your mind? Or after I've shown the prediction, I still haven't revealed like my prediction here, like the thing that I've set aside. I bring it out and I say, okay, you've chosen this pile. Do you want to change your mind? I want to change that to, would you like to select a different pile before we continue? Maybe a little bit more powerful. Any variation of "is that fair?" As in, you cut the cards while my back was turned. Is that fair? This immediately sets up a challenge. You have now told me that I must evaluate whether what you just did, is fair or not. Fair how? By what standards? Fair to whom? And most important, why should I care? What's in it for me if what you do is fair or what? Unfair? Much better to be specific, as cited above in "Would you like to change your mind?" The obvious exception to this is when you are in fact laying down a challenge, as in an escape act, or when doing what mentalists call test conditions, test condition effects. So, is that fair? Goes back to what I was saying earlier about implying that something is happening when nothing is happening. Go ahead and cut the deck. Perfect. Good. You're not implying that anything happened. It is cut. For all assumptions, they don't know anything about circular behavior. All they know is that whatever card was now lost, nothing else needs to be said. Allow that to set in because the brain will connect the dots. Are you sure? I can already see where this is going. In my life, I'm sure about my love of family. I'm sure that I never want to miss my return flight home, and I'm certain that I want the stock market to move higher over the long term. Those are things about which I'm sure. Now you come along, offer me a choice of 5 cards, or meaningless to me symbols, colors, or envelopes, and then, when I point to one, you ask me if I'm sure. Sure about what? Are there dire consequences awaiting me if I choose poorly? How carefully should I consider my options? After all, as far as I can tell, the only thing at risk is your smug satisfaction. Again, it's meaningless magic speak filler. Now, before I get into the finishing up his explanation of that, I do want to point out an act that I think that it can work. Again, it's character driven. So let's say you borrowed something from the audience and you put it into an envelope. I'm not going to go into specifics. I've seen this done live multiple times. Goes into the envelope, and then you give them a choice of envelopes, and then you put it through the paper shredder. Now take a step back. They pick the envelope. Are you sure? Like they're going through. It's their money. Are you sure? Are you sure? Okay. Okay. Next up, you got 2 choices left. You pick one. This one. Are you sure? Okay. Are you sure? And you see green in the envelope that was just shredded. Well, I asked if you were sure. Like you can play it off as a joke. The money was fine, by the way. No money was harmed in the making of this video, or in the making of that trick. It all came back for full circle. Magic Beyond Imagination. Go ahead and check it out. Let's see. Most often, it's best to simply accept the spectator's judgment and proceed. Or, if you do have a legitimate desire to build up the suspense, use specifics. Later tonight, you may think back on this moment and wonder if I influenced you with my hands or voice. So I'll wait quietly while you decide. Are you happy with that card, where you cut the cards, the envelope you pointed to, etc.? In real life, do people become happy after choosing a random playing card or a random color? Magicians ask this silly question frequently, and it never elicits anything except a look of puzzlement. What made you choose? In the countless times I have seen magicians and mentalists ask this question, what made you choose the circle? Have I ever heard an interesting response? Not that I can recall. Again, I think it goes into play here that even I can tell just from reading this and getting the context, but what I've seen in the wild, it does nothing for the moment. Like, oh, I'm happy with that choice. The only reason why that would make sense is if, again, you need to create filler. But if there is solidarity to what it is that you're doing, and again, as Ken has pointed out, unless there's something on the line, what what made you choose that? Like, there's no context for that. Unless you're a mentalist and you're like, I forced you to do that. Like, no, it doesn't make sense to me. And so I can totally see why asking that question as the magician wouldn't make sense. Now, let's say you're on Fool Us and you're talking to one of the hosts or hostess after while Penn and Teller are talking, and they come over and say, what made you choose to do this or that? There's context to that because now you're trying to further understand why it is they chose the medium that they did. But in this context, I can totally understand staying away from it. Again, as with Are You Sure or Are You Happy, it's silly cliche filler that confounds spectators. Either don't ask or add something new, as in, the circle is typically chosen by sex starved pot abusers. Now you can ask, are you sure you want the circle? Criskin says, no way, shape, or form. Way too often. It's a bloated cliche, but many mentalist magicians picked it up and now it uses it as well. What I say with my cards as I'm putting them out is uh, I say something like that where like they're different shapes and sizes, but at least they're the same color, so that at least I don't get confused or something like that. Or at least you have that going for you. I don't know if it seems silly, and I'll have to evaluate that more as I look through this to see whether or not it falls into that same pattern that's just filler, because it is filler pattern. Obviously, I'm just dealing out the cards, and it's my joke. It's like different shapes and sizes because I want to point out the fact without saying that there's different amounts, but I don't want them to pay attention to the amounts. I just want it to be clear that there's more of the cards in each pile. They're not the same amount, and the way that I drop them, they scatter a little bit, and then I square them up. So I'm really kind of just giving it's a joke moment because the punchline of that different shapes and sizes, but at least they're the same color. Yeah. So I'll think about that more later. Any variation of let me show you the first trick I learned. Yeah, I can see why that would be problematic. In a concert, would a professional musician ever announce that she was going to play the first tune she learned? In the brief time I'll be watching you, I don't want to see what you did as a kid, a beginner. I want to see the tricks that took you years to master. Lots of things popping up in the head today. I love this. There's bringing up some real thoughts here, and this is part of the creative mind that you want to nurture. Is that the more you engross yourself and bring yourself and dig yourself deep into the context, the more your brain starts thinking, and that's what you want to do. You want to think. I believe it's the piano guys, but it's the guys that do the cello there. And he was playing on stage, and he's been playing for decades, and he makes the squeaky sound that you might hear when you first start. And he makes that joke where he's like, "Man, that reminds me back when I was in high school in band." Like it just came out. So let's see. Would a theatrical agent who has the moral authority to request something specific from you ask to see your first trick? No. She wants to see your best stuff. The audience can't and won't ask you, but they too want your best. Don't make them feel cheated. Of course, you could perform your first trick if you prefaced it with something interesting or dramatic, as in, this was taught to me by a famous magician who might made me swear to keep it a secret! Exclamation point. You could say that. You could say it with conviction because it's reasonably true. I would also say that, again, if it's part of your character and it's part of your presentation, that you're doing the development of magic and saying something, and we've already covered it with Ricky J. If it's a historic type of presentation where you might say, this, myself included, like many magicians, is the first trick that we learn. Let me show you what it looks like. Boom. Then you follow that up with saying, and this is what you can do with it now. And then you do the same trick, but then you do it so incredibly elevated to a higher level. Well, okay, so now we're back into a list of things. What I'd like you to do is, what I need you to do is, what I want you to do is, what we're going to do is, skip it, drop it, stop it, just get to the point. Those phrases are the most overused phrases in magic, especially in close-up magic. It seems like everyone says them, and it's because everyone says them. You see a performer you admire say those words, and so, without conscious thought, you do the same. On the Big Blind Media website, you can view the trailers for routines from the Out of Sight video by Cameron Francis. The first one I watched was Creation. It's a pretty good, slight-free trick, and Cameron is a pleasing, attractive performer. But over the first 90 seconds, he says variations of what I want you to do is 5 times. Once would have been too much. What I want you all to do is stop saying those words. Please, do me a favor, and that phrase might be tied for most overused. A young pro magician showed me a card trick and said those words 6 times in the 2-minute routine. I wanted to say, do me a favor and stop saying that! Exclamation point. Again, just get to the point, politely. The correct time to say, do me a favor, is when you actually are asking for something out of the ordinary. Do me a favor and go into the audience and find someone with a $100 bill. Regardless, the phrase should be used infrequently. Certainly no more than once per 10 or 15 minutes, or never. So out of context of the actual magic, don't use it as part of your patter and use it as a direction. So you're asking politely, hey, can you do me a favor and grab me that marker that I left over there? So that you don't have to break the flow and it's right next to them, or please hand me that pad. Something along those lines. My phone is ringing. Okay. Beautiful. Let's get back into the action. Do me a favor and go into the audience. I already said that. Or never. Yeah. If you would, as in, if you would, stand over here. I don't know who started this, but it's spreading rapidly. Some pros now say it constantly. And as with do me a favor, it needs to be used sparingly or never. Again, I feel like if you interchange do me a favor or if you would as only part of asking a question when you need them to do something of positioning or hand you something that is out of your reach, and it's only out of politeness that you would say that, you wouldn't use it as part of your patter for the actual effect because it's detracting from what you're trying to say. I'll tell you what. No, don't tell, show, or do. Yeah, that goes for everything in life. I'll tell you what. No, that's good. I'll pass. This is a common phrase used by American sports announcers. I'll tell you what, that guy gives 110% exclamation point, and it's completely meaningless. Unfortunately, we've now begun to see it used by magicians. All right, with a question mark. Nervous magicians follow every action with this word, which is technically an incorrect version of all right. But we're dealing with spoken English here. You can see the cards are well mixed. All right. That just sounds weird even to me just saying that. I might say that as a response to somebody if they said, would you like to do this? And I'd say, all right. That's it. But saying it here just sounds strange. I'll place each card in an envelope, all right. Are those nervous Nellies waiting for a response? I hope not. or or its variation, right? Yeah, that it just sounds strange. I'm going to roll this newspaper into a cone, right? The first time I saw myself on tape, it seemed every fifth word I said was right, and that's so wrong. Okay. Question. Okay? It's not okay to ask that with great frequency. One well known mentalist ends far too many of his sentences with that meaningless query, and others have picked up on the habit. It signals insecurity, and with any luck, the final coin will now have joined the others. As Tina Turner might say, what's luck got to do with it? It's another stale phrase that we use without thinking. One which, if we do give it some thought, implies we're not in control of the magic. I would say again, partner this with let's try something. So let's say you've been successful all night and you say something along the lines of, the next thing we're going to try is something that may be beyond my level. And then fast forward to the end. With any luck, we have pulled this off tonight. Magic. Something like that might work, but again, it's only for the finale. It's only like the big thing, building the tension, really. But he's pointing that out here that somebody might say it at the end of each of the routines, so they might say it 5 or 6 times. It's not luck anymore. You really have to convey the fact that you are doing something that is might even be impossible for you to do. For the first time, as in for the first time, what was the word you were thinking of? The card you saw, the time on the watch. It's another cliche that you say because you've seen hundreds of other magicians say it, which is why you, perhaps for the first time, need to be original. If you've scripted the routine properly, they should be well aware that the information about to be shared has been secret up to that moment. So he's even saying here it's not that it's bad, because cliches aren't bad, but they're overused. So you definitely want to stay away from it for the entertainment factor, because it now just falls into pattern that is recycled. Or so, no one knows the card in your pocket. When I say 3, please show everyone. So that's what he's offering that as an alternative. Or say, no one knows the card in your pocket. When I say 3, please show everyone. Followed up. Next thing not to say is anyways. Yeah, just it's a transition word that it's not. There's no finality to it to me. I don't like it. It's used as a transition when you go from one thought to another. What you mean to say is anyway. Now let's make it a little more interesting. Usually said to indicate a higher degree of difficulty or in a gambling situation, higher stakes. But if you have to announce to me that something is more interesting, it probably isn't. The words are unadulterated filler. If the next moments truly are more interesting, you should trust that your spectators possess sufficient brain power to realize that for themselves. Tell me specifics about what comes next. No, or not banal generalities. What? Wait a second. Brief intermission, and this is a good point, a good time to do some push-ups to get the blood flowing. We've been here for about half an hour. Okay, we are on page 159. Let's get up and stretch a little bit. If you've been here with us this amount of time, whether you're watching for the premiere or if you're here just after the fact, thank you. I appreciate it. Sometime in the future, we might be famous, and I love it. So we're just doing the wall push-ups so we can stay engaged with you. I'm going to be looking at the wall so that I'm not twisting out of my profile here, because then I'll stretch something in a unnatural way. So today, again, I'm not really looking for how many I can do. I'm merely just trying to find a comfortable place and just do the push-ups to get the blood flowing, because I've been sitting for a while. I might even move the chair a little bit this time and just kind of sink the knees in a little bit. That way you can see my face. And then that way I'm getting a little bit of pressure on the knees, which is activating my thighs and my bottom area here, just to get a little bit more blood flowing as I do this. And I'm getting my hands a little bit lower so that I can sink down what muscle groups I'm using to get more of that core in there. Find a nice comfortable spot. Make sure you're breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And I'm going to do this until I start feeling, and remember to keep your knees sunk in. Almost, you want your thighs to be parallel with the wall and keep that bend in the back. Make sure that if it hurts, don't do it. And then we're just going to do that. Keep your butt sunk down until you feel that tension and the lactic acid builds up. And then as you push out, slowly push yourself back up to a full standing position. Shake out your legs. Give yourself a nice little half squat just to feel the tension there. Big deep breath, and now we're back into it. Here we go. A die. Number 5. Okay. Where are we at? Now let's make it a little more interesting. We've already read that part. Possess sufficient brain power. Did that. Would that be a miracle? And if your card appeared between the two jacks, would that be a miracle? It would be more of a miracle if magicians weren't so glib with the word miracle. You are a magician. You are supposed to do amazing things. Save miracle for the most miraculous moments. Better yet, never use it. It makes you sound trite and cheesy. Yeah, for my act, my performance, for my character, that word doesn't make sense to me, and I just wouldn't use it. Now, if you were some type of faith healer, if you're more supernatural, then maybe you could use that as your finale. But again, like he says, just use it once for the show. Like at the beginning, you could say, we're going to build up to perhaps a minor miracle today. And then that's it. That's all you say. Remember, finding a card is at best a 1 out of 52 proposition. Amazing, yes, but miracles ought to rise far above that. Turning water into wine is a miracle. No card trick is a miracle. Does that make sense? This phrase that has popped up in recent years and is popular with young, urban, male close-up magicians, it's commonly used during routines that require close attention. Don't ask smart folks that question. It's somewhat demeaning. I have done it a handful of times, and I'll definitely work on not saying it, because the way that I learned a certain trick is I would do something and then say, oh, does that make sense? Gotcha. Okay. So I will refrain from that. And if you've been clear about your actions, it's unnecessary wise, since it's spreading rapidly in the magic world. You immediately signal, I'm like that other guy you saw, and that makes no sense. Let me ask you a question. No, let me ask you a question. Why don't you just ask the damn question? What do you gain by prefacing your question with a filler sentence? Nothing. A possible exception. So what I'd like to say on that is, whether this is good or bad, hypothetics. Let's say you're doing a philosophical or a psychological excuse me, type of presentation. Maybe you might say, as we lead down this path of questioning, let me ask you a question to set up a premise. It's still very out there, and it's very situational. So it's not going to be something that you're going to want to get in the habit of doing. A possible exception you can ask, Let me ask you, do you remember the first girl you kissed? In that situation, because you are going to ask a personal question, it might make sense to give them a beat to prepare. So yeah, that kind of leads into my suggestion and makes it better. So I would definitely go in that direction as well. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle! Exclamation point. Yeah, we talked about it. Unless you have studied card magic for 5 years in Spain with Tamarez, do not attempt to imitate him! Exclamation point. He says that because it suits his style, it does not suit yours, and even he seems to no longer say it. Same goes for a frantic mix, mix, mix! Exclamation point. Both phrases are becoming magic cliches. Stop, stop, stop using them. Would you like to see one more? No thanks! Exclamation point. Lord, I'd love to yell that out one time! Exclamation point. Whether you're a band, a juggler, or a magician, don't ask that question since we all know what's about to happen. You're going to show us one more. I love it! Exclamation point. Or awesome! Exclamation point. I typically reserve doing an encore piece when they ask. If they say, "Hey, do you have anything else to show me?" That's the only time I'll do something else, and I usually have something completely different. It's another opener. It's another 30-second thing with some type of vanish or some type of memory retention, vision retention thing, like a coin trick or something like that. Because now it's completely different than the trick I just did, and it's flashy, and it's something that they can remember being kind of impressive. Like, you want to see something else? And now this is a strong piece of magic that you wouldn't follow up with anything else. You'd be okay, and then you walk away like you're done. Um, so I love it or awesome. Don't do that. It's typically exclaimed after a volunteer on stage has said something that could be deemed cute or playful, but it often comes across as trite, or worse, false, because it usually is. I don't love it. I don't even like it. I have a lot of exclamation, like I do exclamation point, stuff like that, or fantastic. That's something that I say on a regular basis for my character, which is very colorful and likes to have fun, and I generally enjoy people and I enjoy their stories and I enjoy what they do. So, uh, like salt, moderation. Very unique. Unique like pregnant is all or nothing. You is or you ain't. If a thing is unique, it's one of a kind. You can't be very one of a kind. That's why it can't be very unique. On the other hand, a person or a thing can be very unusual, highly original, amazingly different, or special in her own way. These ones. As in, keep the cards you pointed to, and I'll keep these ones. Just cut out those ones. Say, I'll keep these. It isn't correct to say, you take the red cards and I'll keep the black ones. It is correct to say, you take the red cards and I'll take the black ones. And yeah, I get you. Okay. And for those of you in the cheap seats, demeaning, this phrase had mold growing on it when Viterville was young. David Copperfield can legitimately refer to cheap seats, or at least cheap seats, for few of the rest of us can. Use this phrase, and some people will laugh, but many others will recognize you as a person who belongs in the cheap seats yourself. Plus, think about it. If you actually did have different seat prices and you made that joke, how did you just make those who couldn't afford the better seats feel? At a major magic convention, I heard a well known among magicians performer use this phrase twice in one short set. Get with the new millennium! Exclamation point. Yeah, that's definitely one of those that I wouldn't use. Uh, you've been a great crowd. A vastly overused cliche thanks to stand-up comics. Think of other ways to express your appreciation to the audience. Your own cliches. Many performers, as they address the audience, unwittingly repeat certain phrases. I saw one high-level magician say, "So folks, you see," every few minutes. Again, this is the reason you need to record your show and watch it with a critical eye. Eliminate your own brand of repetitive phrases. 100% agree on that. Back to grammar school. Whether we care to admit it or not, people judge us by our outward appearance and by the way we speak. Everyone, no matter how erudite, slips occasionally and says something that may be considered wordy, reductant, or pretentious. Then there's grammar. Among some in your audience, poor grammar leads to an immediate ouch, in the same way as a palmed card inadvertently flashed. You are judged by your use of the language, so you want to keep errors to a minimum. Just for a few samples of less than stellar language skills I've recently heard from the mouths of performers. At this point in time should be at this point, or at this time, or simply now. I could care less is careless English. When you reach absolute zero emotional attachment to any particular subject, you are in a state where you could not care less. To say you could care less means that you do have feelings. Exactly the opposite of what you want to convey. I think that'd be funny to say, I could really care less about what is happening right now. We're having a great time. Like that. It just sounds. You got to really have a character that just says silly things. Like the next one, which is irregardless. I would say that intentionally just to mess with people in the contradiction of what it is that I'm saying. No such word, regardless of what you may think. So, yeah. Just like the other day I said to unthaw, which means to freeze. Yeah. That's weird. Anyway, should have went, could have wrote, have gone, have written. Her, him, and I. She, he, and I. Or her, him, and me as appropriate. Between you and I, between you and me. If you have any fear that your grasp of English may lead to muffled chuckles among your spectators, ask a knowledgeable friend to watch your video to check for verbal flubs. So what I would say in that case, like you or I, between you and I and you and me, I would say if you're in a sidebar, so for instance, if you're talking to the audience, but you had an interaction with somebody earlier, and you kind of do like a cover your mouth moment because you're referencing that person, you might say, between you and me, but if you're addressing everybody, you and I, because it's more formal. If you're friends, if you've created a bond with one of the audience members because of something that happened previously, then I might just be informal and say, between you and me, this guy, like, depending on what your character is, I feel like that would be fine as you're creating an informal moment between you and somebody, or even the whole audience, like saying, there's things going on out there, there's noises or whatever, but between you and me, we're going to continue with what we've got going on here. It's a joke, and you're playing it off. So let's keep going. We're at 50 minutes. When I count to 3, you'll say it right. Exclamation point. A note to my fellow hypnotist. It's not hypnotism. You are a hypnotist, not a hypnotist. There are a bunch of pro-hypnotists out there who can't correctly pronounce what they are or what they do. Don't be lazy about learning to say those words correctly. Say it right, or I'll turn you into a duck. Honesty is the best policy. Magicians lie. Your egg bag isn't empty. You do, in fact, know which card was selected. The solid steel rings aren't quite as they appear. So why lie any more than you must? Don't tell me about a funny thing that happened on the way to the show tonight if it never happened. I don't want to hear that the other day a guy said, yeah, but can I see what's under the hat? If no such guy crossed your path recently, magicians constantly throw in these trivial lines, and the lines invariably ring false. Save for the occasional accomplished actor among us, the audience knows you're fibbing, and it cheapens the moment. If you're a busker and you're out on the streets performing daily, you might have more interactions. Like, I don't know if the stories are true because I wasn't there, but street magician dude, Jason Marr, has told countless stories over the last decade or so that he's been doing magic that has happened on the streets, and some of those are rather funny. Doug Kahn has told these stories that have happened on the streets because they're out there performing daily. That's their livelihood. So you're interacting with more people on a regular basis. You might have stories that are more hard to believe because of that. So I don't want to hear da 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 da. Just skip all that. Save for the occasional accomplice actor. Unless you're going for a strong punchline, the best policy is to be as truthful as possible. You can, of course, delve into a richly detailed narrative, one speckled with fictionalized moments which serves to communicate your humanity. Remember, that's important. Or perhaps to deliver rapt attention. That's another one. Now we're using our key phrases, the six pillars. But again, that's territory for those elite few who can convincingly enthrall us with words. The art of skillful lying, which might be better termed as acting, develops over years, and you'd be wise to approach it slowly and cautiously. Yeah, storytelling is very important. And I say story in this wise because even if you're telling a story that is true, you should be able to tell a story that's made up almost hand in hand. Like, you should be able to embellish the story in a way that is entertaining, and you have to be good at storytelling in general to convey that emotion. Yeah. And please, if you promise something, don't ignore that promise. Here's a minor example. It's from Bill Malone's 4-disc collection, On the Loose, which I consider to be high school, college, and graduate work on how to present a solid set of thoroughly entertaining close up card magic. Toward the beginning of his terrific 3-card Monty routine, he says, "And when I'm done, I'll teach everyone how the trick works." Okay, is that a deal? But he doesn't truly teach it, and at the end, sure enough, the spectator who served as the victim says during the applause, "I thought you were going to show me how to do it!" Exclamation point. "Yeah, I was," Bill says with a sly smirk to the audience. "Many of us have done things like that. We don't need it. Let's stop." So, okay, I get that. So, something that I would do is I like to leave somebody with something, but they might not really be interested in it. So, I'm going to stop doing it. So, the key card. I used to tell people, I used to have like a small 3-phase thing that I would do that escalate it using the same principle 3 times. And then I would tell them at the beginning, I can show you how to do it. I had somebody say, no, I'm not really interested. I want the mystery to, I don't want to learn it. So I was like, okay, so that was my first flag of don't do this. Now we're talking about it here in the sense of it seems kind of pointless, especially if they're not interested. But what I would do in that routine is every time I would do it slightly different and change the context. So I think I haven't done it in a while, and I'll definitely stay away from it just because they're not soliciting me to learn it. So I'll stay away from that. Raising hands. How many of you read mystery novels? How many of you enjoy eating at fine restaurants? There is a virus spreading among corporate and motivational speakers, and now some magicians and mentalists are infected as well. It's the mindless asking for a show of hands. I find it patronizing and annoying. Let's see. Oh, we're pretty close here. We're pretty close. We only got a couple minutes left, and we're gonna wrap this up right in the under the hour mark. So let's keep going. Don't ask me something if the answer doesn't truly matter to you. Some performers fall back on these questions because they think it's a form of audience participation, when in reality it's the same as breadcrumbs and cheap crab cakes. Filler. Your audience craves sustenance, not filler. I've twice attended magician and master marketer Joel Byers' intense high energy sessions, where he seeks to sign up new acolytes. Although he claims otherwise, he's a force of nature, and you should check him out if you have a chance. But he literally asks, how many of you? Every 2 or 3 minutes, sometimes every few seconds! Exclamation point. Not once did I see him take any notice of the hands that went up. The people around me looked like marionettes, with their hands flying up and down, for no discernible reason. Ask that question only when needed. On the other hand, here is a slightly edited 2018 email exchange on this topic between my friend Brett Berry, a successful pro mentalist and originator of the smash hit Seven Pads, and me. Brett wrote, in Maximum Entertainment, you mentioned that you dislike the polling of an audience. But at Jeff McBride's master mentalist classes over the years, this is precisely what he and Eugene, etc., have taught as an effective way of connecting to an audience. In practice, I have found that saying on stage, how many have seen the movie Inception, hands up, I then proceed to explain briefly what the main storyline was, and why, as a mentalist, it matters for what they are about to see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Jeff, Ross, Eugene, Larry, Hass are wrong too. I know there are numerous schools of thought, and your book is considered the Bible on many performance aspects. Just wondering if I am misunderstanding this rule of the road, as for me, it has felt to be effective as a connector to the audience. Ha! Nope. In this instance, I'm right and they're wrong! Exclamation point. Mr. Humility here. As you know, I say that ideally every word has a targeted reaction. What reaction is sought when you ask that question? In fact, whether one hand goes up or all the hands, it seems like it will have zero effect on what you say next. That's the issue. It's meaningless and therefore qualifies as filler. As compared to, say, you ask that question about the movie and then you engage briefly with one or more of the folks who raised their hands. That changes everything. It tells us you asked the question for a real reason, or you see, or we see you look around to get a true sense of how the audience responded, and then steer your presentation towards that response. A deep bow here, by the way, to the masterful and massive work Jeff McBride and his team have done over the years to elevate our art. Jeff's book, The Show Doctor, makes a great companion to this book. And of course, losing his dean, Eugene Berger, in 2017, created a hole in the magic world that may never be filled. So, yes, there are legitimate reasons to pull your audience. Perhaps you truly do need to learn something about who is out there looking at you. Although it's usually too late to be doing research once you're standing on stage. Or, as alluded to above, perhaps you want to involve a spectator who has had a specific experience. Yeah, I can definitely see this. Like, if I'm going to be performing for kids, I would want to ask them a question like you would in the classroom, but then I would then want to directly engage the presentation towards the answering of that question so the kids feel like participating gains a reward. Because otherwise, if you ask a question but then don't follow it up with participation reward, then they're not going to participate next time because they don't gain anything from participating. So, especially with kids, it's weird that I've seen it multiple ways. If you're being heckled by kids, it's almost better to acknowledge them and let them participate because that's what they want, and that's going to help them get on your side because you're giving them a job. So now you've regulated them to an assistant, but they're happy, you're happy, and the show gets to go on. So you really have to play it really finely between your audience types. So just know how to interact with them, and you'll be fine. Because that's what he's saying here. You can do a poll, but it has to have meaning and context to the presentation. So at the beginning, you say, who has experience with this thing? So about half of you. So why don't we go ahead and try something with somebody who has experience with it and somebody who doesn't. So let's have somebody come up from both groups, and then now it has purpose, it has meaning. You've led into a reason for asking that question besides just you know, ha, I've asked the question and we got people to raise their hand. So yes, there are legitimate reasons to pull your audience. Perhaps you truly do need to learn something about who is out there looking at you. Although it's usually too late to be doing research once you're standing on stage. Or as alluded to above, perhaps you want to involve a spectator. So now that I've found where I was at, if you ask the question of who has seen this thing, let's say you're doing magic that is very inspired by Houdini. Who has seen Houdini? Great. But let's say you ask a question that is Who has seen this performer recently? You got people raising their hands. Then you're about to do something that is very inspired by them. Contextually, they might know what you're about to do. So you might really have to say, um, maybe do something, change it a little bit, because now you're about to do something that isn't going to, it's not going to help you to do it, because they know what you're about to do, or they have no idea the context of what you're about to do, and explaining it isn't going to further your presentation. They're just not going to understand, and so you might have to do something else. Or you may be using the "how many of you" query as the setup for a joke. Mentalist Eric Diddleman asked, "Who voted for me on America's Got Talent?" He relies on few or no hands going up so he can deliver the punchline. Cool, that's why I lost. Thanks. The great Israeli mentalist Lior Manor works for major corporations around the world, and he starts his show by saying, "You hear I talk with an accent, so I can do my act in bad English or perfect Hebrew. How many of you want me to do it in bad English? Hands up. Hands go up, and the audience is smiling immediately. Say what? Corporate speakers use an offshoot of raising hands that I find equally irritating and useless: the unfinished sentence. They turn to the audience and wait for them to shout out the final word or words. As in, many people won't touch frogs because they're afraid of getting, or they use a variation on that theme, the sentence ending in what? Money is printed by government so we can have what? I rarely see magicians do this, but I have seen mentalists and hypnotists employ this strategy. It's dumb for two reasons. One, if everyone knows the answer, why did you bother asking? It didn't move the program along, it slowed it down. If most people don't know the answer to your query, suddenly we're back in school and some of us feel dumb. Closely related to the say what and raising hands annoyances are the many performers who ask their audiences for permission, as in, now we're going to play a little lottery game. Is that okay with everybody? And then they wait for a response. Wimpy. Superman controls every moment. Every time you ask an audience anything and then pause for a response, you momentarily cede control. Be certain you have a clear and compelling reason for your query. Again, what reaction are you targeting? If it's not laughter or rapt attention, delete it. Well, yeah, because like in sales, we learned the fact that like if you act, I fell into that like problem. In sales, you want to control the conversation. You want them to feel like they're in control of their own decision, because they are, but you want the sale. So you will not ask them questions that they can say no to. You want to lead the conversation in a direction that is favorable for both people. You're going to get the sale, but they are going to gain something that helps them. And that's how sales should work. You shouldn't be selling people stuff they don't want. They came to your show. They've already said yes. So why are you asking them if you can continue? Like, they're already there. They want to be there. They walk out. They leave. Bye. Like that. Don't be that. Don't be that person. Be in control and be the magician. You're there for a reason. They're there for a reason. Entertain them. Don't state the obvious! Exclamation point. When watching a performer, nothing bores me faster than his telling me something I already know. Don't mention that the sky is blue, that it's hot in January, or don't ever tell me I have here a deck of cards. Why are you telling me that? Do I not have eyes to see? You tell me what you have here only when it's something I would not easily recognize. As in, I have here a miniature Egyptian sarcophagus, exhumed from deep below the museum store at the Roosevelt Field Mall. Similarly, don't tell me what you are doing or about to do. Now I'll cut the rope in the middle. I'm going to shuffle the cards. I'll just place the lid back on the pan. Boring! Exclamation point. Adults, remember I did that earlier? Boring! Just there it is. Or did I do it? I don't know. Anyway, adults don't need to be told the obvious. So unless you're a kids show performer, just do the action or come up with words that add something to the moment. And only for the sake of completeness am I bringing up the magic 101 advice about This is an ordinary deck of cards. Never refer to any prop as ordinary. A deck of cards, a coin, a pad of paper, a piece of rope are all presumed to be ordinary unless you raise suspicion or needlessly draw attention to them. All overtly magical props are assumed to be so suspect and can never be labeled as ordinary. I pray that no one has ever uttered the words, I have here an ordinary zigzag box. What? Oh, chapter 10, How to Be Funny! Exclamation point! That's for tomorrow. So we did mention that early on about not narrating what it is that you're doing, and don't draw attention to something like shuffling the cards when there's no reason to do that. Now, I do want to leave you here today with something magical. I have about 50 decks of cards sitting in arm's reach, and yet I can't find any. Pink. So here's what we're doing today. I'm going to go ahead and switch over here real quick. We're going to end with a card trick. So thank you guys for sticking around. I really appreciate you. Here's something that we've been working on in just for the funsies of it. I don't even know if this deck is set up for something. It might have. Okay, yeah, that's what I usually do. Yeah, we'll get rid of those. We don't need the extra stuff today. This one's a fun one. You guys really seem to enjoy this. I don't like this camera angle at all for this trick because I haven't practiced it from that angle. Like, who's watching my hands? You know what I'm saying? So we're going to just tilt this down so you can see this. Okay, so here's how this works. We have a card selected. Now, if you were here, you could just point to one. We're going to go ahead with the 7 of hearts. That's a good choice here. Now, you can clearly see the 7 of hearts is on top. Very nice. Into the pack it goes. There it is. Nice. Simply by doing a little bit of magic, it reappears on top. I love it. I love it. Now, you can take this card. You gotta do the noise or it doesn't work. You know, sound effects, right? Now, it hasn't jumped back to the top yet. Oh, it already has. Sorry, I was confused. That's okay. Here's what we gotta do. We're gonna take that and put it into the center. Just like that. Terrible. Don't do that. It's already back to the top. Just like that. Just like that. See, he's doing it already. See, we don't do that. Don't say those things. I'm going to put your card right there for a second. And we've missed our timing, but that's okay. The card on the table is now a different card. It's the 6. Haha! We've built up the suspense as your card appears here. We're going to have to work on it a little bit more. I was practicing it live. It's a beautiful little trick, and it's the clip shift that you guys like. So hopefully you guys stuck around to see some magic. Not stellar magic, but we're getting there. We got to practice. Practice, practice, practice. Let's go with the meat and potatoes of that routine, which looks something like this. Having a card selected works perfectly when the cards are face up. I'm narrating for the purpose so that you can understand what's going on. You wanted the 10 of clubs. That's why we put it on top. Gorgeous. It goes into the center. That's where it's at. Into the center here. You take that card and you're simply going to put it on the table. Now, remember, you're not saying any of this at all. You're just placing it on the table. Now, we've lost your card on the table. It didn't jump to the top. It went somewhere else. I don't know where it's at. Let's start over. We're now actually just playing around for the fun of it. Because we're trying to get this trick. A little bit of magic theory for you. Let's see if I can do it without talking. Because that helps. Hacha. There it is. Okay. So the premise of that, to go through it, to explain it to you, because we like to teach some stuff on the channel, and sometimes I find it's easier to get rid of the noise in the head, right? So what I like to do is this. You have the card selected face up, so they can point to the card. And no matter what card they pick, 6 of spades, you're going to go ahead and move it to the top. However you want to do that. Then you do a double lift to show them the top card. You want them to see the card. You want to tell them what the card is. That's a joker. Okay, so we know that's not the card. Obviously, your card is still in the center of the deck. They just saw you show them the joker. You slide it down to the deck, and then you show them that it's their card, the 6 of spades. That's the one they wanted, right? Then you're going to push it in and clip it in a finger break, but tip forward at the same time to push off their card. Now, as you're moving forward, you're covering the back to execute your clip shift. As you drop that, and then you drop that on top, dropping this in the front and then dropping it on top gives you a chance to then bring it back to square up. Now, you show them again. Remember, on top was the joker. Nothing's changed. So when you come back to the table, you can show them how quickly you can change the card on the table. Because, of course, their card has been here the whole time. Now, you don't have to reveal that yet because they think that's the joker that you're flipping over. I like doing it like this. I like flipping it forward like that to show them that, and then taking a step back and then flipping over that one and pushing that one forward, that's their card. And that's what you can do with the clip shift. Turnover, pass, and some double lifts. So thank you, everybody. And remember, stay positive, stay active, and stay awesome. And we'll see you tomorrow for Chapter 10. We learn how to be funny. Exclamation point. Don't forget to subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And, of course, over here is a video just for you. Yep, just for you. Ta-da!